Last night there was wind interference in the video I tried to do to save time when I was watching for the new moon. Then I made a live video to YouTube and there was no sound. So I'm doing what I was trying to avoid. I'm going to record this and I'm going to have to put it through a video processor and put it up on YouTube. Such is life sometimes, right? So what I said last night is there is no Abib barley in conjunction with the new moon. Again, there is not an omer's worth of Abib barley in conjunction with the new moon. Doesn't bother me, not for my purposes. Acts chapter 9, if you've never studied it, please do go. Acts chapter 9 says that Jehovah called a moed, and the moed he called, I'm pretty sure it was the new moon, because I was standing out there last night to see if he was calling a new moon, which is a moed. Was in the temple, they offered a sacrifice on the new moon. So then after that, in Exodus 9, it talks about the barley being Abib. And then after that, it talks about Passover. Additionally, in the New Testament, we see Yeshua is the son of Jonah 3 days and 3 nights. And so he was cut off from the living, as Isaiah 53:8 says, on Pesach, 3 days ahead of wave sheaf. So for me, I have chosen the date of 3 days in front of Pesach, because when I look at what the men would have had to have done, they would have had to have been in Jerusalem for the week of unleavened. They would have had to have been there for Passover. And I have a hard time seeing men leaving during the week of unleavened to run home and grab the barley wave sheaf and come back with it in time for wave sheaf. So the barley is not Abib, the barley is not Abib, but there is still time. I found a location that I feel like is even more viable to bring a first fruits out than the other location that I had previously posted a picture of. The newest location reminds me a lot of the section of the field where we did get an omer of wild wheat from the father to start the calendar last year. Do I know that there's time for it to make that omer in time before three days in front of Passover? I don't know. I don't know how the weather will turn, how the weather will hold. I don't know if the rains will hold back. I haven't looked, haven't had time. I don't know what the earth will do. Rains bring cold, and lack of rain brings heat. If we have heat until every day until those 3 days in front of Pesach, we have a pretty doggone good chance. Okay, so that's out of the way. The other thing I was saying, trying to get across in those videos, and excuse me, I am still a little tired. I've been dealing with a lot of stuff in the background that you guys are not aware of. Maybe at the end of this video, I'll give a testimony of God's mercy and grace. So the other thing that I was wanting to say last night is that what I am doing as of this year has changed, and not about how I search for barley or the method I use to determine it. But in the past, I have always pinpointed, the past 2 years, I've always pinpointed the field for other inspectors to come in. And they do come in, and of course, they have a different version of Abib than I understand the term Abib. And they come in and they give a bad witness. No, it's not Abib, to their understanding. Well, I'm not going to give them a pinpoint witness location anymore. As I said last year, when I said that this end of the field is Abib, I mentioned that Divorce Date Tree would say it's not. And even though I told her and I told everyone listening that it wouldn't be. There was still a need for her on a personal level to go in there and say it's not a beeb. And unfortunately, when she doesn't qualify the field, she doesn't go into the detail that I go into to explain why it's not a beeb and how she believes something differently than I see. So last year, it was on my heart to no longer pinpoint locations. And I listened to someone I respect, and he encouraged me to go ahead and release it. And I did. But this year, that feeling is still in me that I'm not to release the location. It is like, to me, it is as if I am casting pearls that the Father has given us before. I start in the 11th month, the end of the 11th month, and I begin to intercede and pray and ask the Father to lead and guide my steps. You have two groups that inspect barley on their regular routes. I do barley searches because I've seen in the last 2 years how the Father provides beautiful fields miraculously for a single year and then they're gone. And so, how can I ignore that? How can I ignore what he's demonstrated to me? December 24th, 2 years ago, barley in the field, and it was a beautiful field. In fact, if you go back and watch the first time that Devorah went into that field, she says it's beautiful. It was beautiful, a beautiful field. But that field's no more. It's been covered with boulders on one end, and it's been planted in a little orchard on the other. So we don't have it to use anymore. But the next year, Abba gave us another field. And it was a good field. It was it's a small field, but it was a significant amount of land that was in Shemitah. And we had in the field an omer. So I've seen two miraculous years. How can I not go out and search the land and see what the Father's will is? And besides the work and the time I spend with the Father during the season, there is the whole situation of that neither divorced date tree nor a beeb of God would ever find something that I said was ready to start the year with as acceptable because their criteria is so vastly different than what I'm looking for. A beeb of God has a qualified circuit of fields, and he's looking for a field of barley. Laura usually goes in behind and checks his fields, but she is looking for enough barley to feed a nation in conjunction with the new moon. So, with that being said, there's really no reason to share pinpoint locations. Instead, I will say things like near Jerusalem, near Carmel, somewhere in the Jordan Valley. Those are the types of indicators that I will give. The photographs that I'm providing now have my name. They have a date stamp, and I believe they have a time, but they also have a copyright. And that should be plenty to prove on what day and year and so on and so forth that I've seen what I've seen. So the miracle, let's talk about the miracle. This is a true story. You can ask Joe Dumont or Randy Cates if you want to. March last year, when they came down to look at the fields, after I had zeroed in on the one field that gave us the beeb barley, that day that I took them to that field, my car started making a funny noise. And I took the car into the garage, and Chaim Greenfield is my mechanic, and He couldn't hear the noise. No, Rivka, I can't hear it. You're going to have to come and bring and leave it for the day, and I'll see if I can find it. Well, I didn't, just because it's very hard for me to get back from the mechanic, only having one car and me being the only driver. So I waited until maintenance, and maintenance on the car came along, which was not very long. And maintenance happens, or not. You do maintenance on the cars here before you get the test for the license. That's just the time that you change the oil and all that stuff. And the mechanic, then he looks at it and he says, this is what you need to pass an inspection. So I waited until maintenance, so March, April, May, June, and took it back to Chaim, and I said, Chaim, can you hear the noise? No, I can't hear the noise. I can't find the noise. So from March last year until I was coming home last Wednesday, after being out looking at fields. I had been on the road. I had been down south, as a matter of fact. It's about 2.5 hour drive if you don't hit traffic from my from door to location. It's quite a drive. Car was fine. Car ran fine, no problem. Got home, turned the key off. In the morning, the insufficient oil light came on. They say it's the oil pressure, but it comes as a light. It's a little backwards here in Israel. It says insufficient oil, turn off the engine. Insufficient oil, turn off the engine. I thought that's really weird. So I checked the oil. It's normal for me to check the oil. It was 2 liters low. And so I'm in panic mode. I've got barley inspections. I'm not finished. We don't have a beeb. We don't have a omer of a beeb. We don't have an omer of a beeb in a field. And I took the car in, and I'm sitting there praying, oh, Father, do I rent a car? I don't have the money to rent a car. And if I rent a car, which day should I rent it for? And I was literally just sitting there, and I didn't know what was wrong with the car at that point. And I was literally sitting there just wrestling. I'm not going to tell you all the details, but literally, while I was sitting there in the process, someone reached out to me on one of the social media apps and said, hey, Rivka, how much money do you need? And I told the individual, I'm fine with gas, but this is what happened with the car. And the individual leased a car for a month so that I can finish barley inspections. Now back to the car. Chaim called me the next day and he says, Rivka, there's not a drop of water in this radiator. He said, you've had a wreck. You've had a wreck. The radiator's broken. You've had a wreck. I said, Chaim, I've not had a wreck. He said, maybe you hit something in the parking lot. Maybe you hit something on the speed bump. I said, Chaim, I've not hit anything. Well, it doesn't matter. You have to decide, do you want a new radiator or not? 1,700 shekels. And he said, and I won't even, this is Israel, in the US, they'd put it on a machine and diagnose it, right? So he said, I won't even know if you damaged your motor until we put the radiator on. I said, well, put the radiator on. And I picked the car up today. So now this is going on behind the scenes in this last week. I finally got to pick the car up today after they ordered the radiator and got everything on. And I went up there and he says, Rivka, there was not a drop of water in that oil. I said, but Chaim, I said, what about the oil? He says, I can't find anything, either on the top of the engine or the bottom of the engine. I can't find anything where it's leaking or why it would use the oil. I said, okay, Chaim. I said, but what about the air conditioner? I haven't had air conditioner in a long time. He said, Rivka, when you broke the radiator, you broke the air conditioner, and the air conditioner was rattling against the radiator. This is March of last year. I said, he said, I put coolant in it. It's fine. I said, but Chaim, what about the noise? He said, Rivka, the noise was the broken radiator. So that is the absolute miracle provision of Elohim. I have driven that car at will to Haifa, all over looking for barley. My daughter and my youngest daughter and her children were here for a month in May, and we were all over Israel, her first trip, all over Israel, looking at everything. When the Filipino doctors stayed with us, I took them out in the car. Never once did the engine, the hot, the overheating light come on. Never once did the oil light come on. That rattle was consistent, but never did the car function or give me any warning that there was any trouble. That was the hand of Elohim. I cannot put those pieces together. I cannot figure out how I can hear a broken radiator and a broken air conditioner that long and still have an engine that works in the car. But Chaim put the pieces in there, hung the air conditioner back up, put Freon in it, and it's running like a champ. But that brings me to another subject. That car is a 2013 Fiat Cubo with 176,000 kilometers on it. The average lifespan of a Fiat Cubo that year is 200,000 kilometers. So the barley wagon's getting to the end of the life. And my husband has asked me not to drive it for searching barley anymore. And rightfully so. It's not just what I use for looking for barley. It's our daily car. The other thing you need to know is my husband is on a different spiritual page than I am. He doesn't mind me doing this. He has some questions about it in his heart that's unresolved on whether or not it's absolutely necessary that we determine when the calendar begins in this day and time. But he insists that if I'm doing this, that quote unquote, as he calls it, the ministry supports itself. So in the coming year, you all need to be praying for a vehicle for me to do the inspections with. And I'm very sure that whatever happened to the vehicle in 2022, because it was barley season, probably happened when I was trying to get into an area with barley. And I didn't realize it. Although I'm not a hot rod, I can't even think of what I did back then that might have caused it. I'm not a hot rod at all. I know how to drive off-road cautiously. I don't go down through there, but I mean, I go slow. And if there's a little divot, I ease one wheel at a time off in there and go straight, don't plunk down. I drive down into it. So I'm still clueless on how this is broken, but it was broken. And my father saved the vehicle. We still have a vehicle to speak of. But in the coming year, please be praying forward that I have provision. I mean, I would even be happy with a rental car. I don't care. It doesn't matter. I don't have to have a second car. Or that I have some kind of utility vehicle that will take the dirt roads that I go on when I'm looking at barley. This year, they were really pretty rough because of the vast amount of rain that we had in a short period of time. We had that storm come through and just dump water like merciless, without mercy. I'm sorry, I am tired. It wasn't the driving that makes me tired. It's the walking the fields. If you find a big field, you got to walk it. You got to see what's what down in the field. And that's what makes me tired. Anyway, without mercy, it dropped rain without mercy, and it left some pretty good runoff ruts. So anyway, thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. I'm going to publish this video and pray everything works out and you can hear it and see it this time.